Today is Tuesday, May 28th, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Podcast.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.
Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Podcast. I am your co-host, Mike Shalau of Is Was Brewing. I'm here with your other co-host, Chris Quinn from the Beer Temple.
Well, hey. What's up?
Chris just got off the Morning Zoo,
Yeah.
his other podcast that he records at 7:30 p.m.
Yeah. Just in time for this.
I will have to say, one of the best fades in the last week.
Yeah.
Probably.
Probably the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, definitely number one of the last week.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. Best of the week.
We're here with Serge.
Yep.
Fading in, fading out.
Thanks
you,
to Serge for fading, as always. Keeping it faded.
Yep.
Thanks to Lumpin' Radio for having us on. WLPN 105.5 FM. Fearless crew out there. Got to get back there. We got to do an in-studio episode. I have an idea we'll talk about.
From the community of the future.
Yes. So, yeah, well, thanks to them. Thanks to everyone who's been listening and writing letters and comments and all that sort of stuff. And watching us on. You can now watch a still frame on YouTube. There's an integration now, so it'll just put up your episode picture. And so, the podcasts are up there.
High effort for
as
us.
well. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so
Look
it's
at us.
up there. So we're on YouTube.
New technology, YouTube.
YouTube, exactly.
After you're done with your Sniper Wolf videos, you can click over to the
Exactly.
Chris and Mike curmudgeonly talking about beer foam.
That's what my kids do.
Yeah.
At least the first part.
Yeah, they
do
watch-
the first half.
Yeah, they do the first half. They don't listen to
They
it.
live the second half.
Right.
They don't need to watch it.
Listen, beer foam's going away, and we need to fix it.
Right.
Dad,
Right.
I just want to play with my butter
No,
slime.
you're the one.
Yeah.
You are the chosen
You're the chosen one.
You are
You're the
going
chosen one
fix
to
it.
bring back
Yeah.
the foam
Yeah.
and the lacing.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I got a text from a friend of the show, Will Loring, at Lesser Known Beer. They do a lot of pours right off their tanks. They got a lot of cool pouring mechanisms. And he sent me a bunch of lacing, asking, "Is this good lacing?" And it certainly was.
Oh yeah, that's
For
another
this visual medium, I'm showing.
Let's see.
Look at
So
that.
I'll describe
Pretty good,
it.
huh?
And just put the phone up to my face. Okay. So what we have here is a classic tapered Pilsner glass with the little foot on the bottom.
Yep.
And it's about, this picture now
Switched
is
it.
completely empty, and it's got excellent banding on it. It's banded with every sip from the top of the glass all the way to the bottom. And I'd say the bottom quarter of it has lacing in between the bands as well.
There's some in the some in the top here too.
Sure.
On the top,
Sure.
there's lacing.
I give it a solid 8 to 8.5 out of 10.
That's pretty good.
8.5 is very good.
He even sent. Then I was like, "How are you cleaning those glasses?" He got a Hobart low temp dishwasher. They use the regular Ecolab chemicals.
There you
So
go.
my philosophy or theory about it being the cleaning chemicals is probably not true.
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, keep sending. You can. People have been sending me, or the
Here's another
on.
good one he sent me. It's a darker beer in a dimple mug.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one too.
Mm-hmm.
I'll only talk about one. I'll only describe one set of lacing per episode, at least within a single 5-minute period. How about that?
My phone has started reading me texts people send me when I don't know why it's doing this,
Yes.
but then sometimes it describes the picture.
Yeah.
And so basically you were Siri for everyone listening to the...
Yeah. But people have been sending me on Instagram pictures of their foam.
Yeah.
So I encourage that. Keep doing it. maybe we should start a Instagram. So me and our first guest that we'll introduce, we actually have a Facebook. No, not a Facebook. A text group called named the Lacing Lads. I don't know if I'm blowing up our spot, but what we do, we may or may not trade pictures of lacing. There's a third person on there as well. So
who's the third person? Is it Jonathan?
It might be.
Okay.
So yeah. So
Thanks for the invite, guys.
Yeah. Someone asked when that's going to go onto the gram, and I said, yeah, well, that'll be we'll really blow up the internet with that one. But
the kids these days.
But keep sending your pictures, because I've yet to see what I would call a perfect 10, and I'm not saying that does not exist. I'm not one of them. I think a perfectly laced glass does exist. I've seen, I think, 9 and aboves, but I want to see a 10, and then what I want is at the Beer Temple is to achieve 10s on a regular basis.
Well,
we'll see.
Where are you at right now? Where are you on your lacing journey at the Beer Temple?
I mean, it's frustratingly inconsistent. It's frustratingly inconsistent. So we get some that are just like, we knock it out the park, and other times not as much. I mean, we have Trumer on. That's fine. That's tepid lacing in your glass right now. So we'll see. We'll just have to see. I will say Hopewell gets some great lacing going on.
Speaking of which.
Yeah. So we have our first guest, our senior-most guest this week. I know it's, summer just began, but it's already blazing hot in here.
Did you turn the air
No.
conditioning?
No, I didn't. Well, the AC's been on. I didn't touch the temperature. No, I didn't turn the heat on.
It's got to be like 100 degrees in here.
Yeah.
Celsius.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Kelvin, if that's hotter.
I don't think it is.
Okay, Celsius.
I think that's very cold.
Okay.
So it's 100 Celsius is fine. We'd be dead.
You would be dead.
I mean, if there was water in the room, it would be boiling right now. If it was 100 Celsius. So
Not necessarily.
that means our blood would probably be boiling. Anyway,
The water would
we've got
necessarily
the hot take himself,
the human hot take.
Jake Guidry. How are you?
Hey, what's up, folks?
What up, man?
Not much. Thanks for having me. And they're not quite up to a rolling boil yet. They're on a slow simmer, getting to temp here. But we'll see what we can do. And Chris, you did blow up my spot being in this group chat of being a huge nerd.
We can beep it. That's not. Nothing was blown up by saying that.
Yes, we are in a group chat sharing photos of lacing from various beers that we drink.
Just the coolest group of people.
Yeah. This is what I got into the biz for. Here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I talk. Even the people who work here kind of like shake their head when I talk about this stuff. But it's all that I have.
You have a family. You have a business you run.
I don't make me repeat
Chris.
myself. But anyway, thanks for coming on.
Oh yeah, appreciate coming back. I think it's been a couple months at this point, but
Yes.
happy to chop it up with y'all and drink some beers and talk a little nonsense. Maybe hopefully illuminate some things. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Illuminate them with the fire of your takes. Yes, looking forward to it. And then our next guest is a first-time guest, and tradition states that you have to introduce yourself. So why don't you go for it, tell everyone who you are and what your relationship to beer is.
All right. I'm Zigmas Maloni. I work at Beermiscuous in Highwood, and we also have another cafe in Lakeview. I basically just write the letters on the map there. And they also have Lucers because I have bought them for them. So
Okay. All right.
Nice.
they use
Thanks
them
for
well.
coming on.
Thank you. Thanks
Yeah.
for being here.
And you're in my mind, the local lucre expert.
Good. I have a spreadsheet of all the Lucers in the area. So
There you go. That's enough for me. Someone asked, prove it. If I said, Zigmas is the local Lucre expert, and someone said, prove it, and I would say,
shared the Google Doc.
and someone, and I said, prove it, and you said he has a spreadsheet of all the local Lucres in the area, I would say, okay, that's enough. And you said, and also, that's fine. That's okay. I believe you.
Yeah, we got it.
Well, I think we should probably start. We didn't do it as I was introducing people, but let's go around and see if anyone's had any beers lately that they've enjoyed. Has anyone had something that they've enjoyed lately or something that they're looking forward to having?
I walked up to Half Acre on Sunday and had one of their collaborations with Sierra Nevada.
Oh, yeah, the double IPA?
Yeah, the Daisy Cutter Select or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's it.
It was great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I was craving some hops.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. What do you know?
Right.
These two young upstarts made a nice hoppy brew.
Yes. Zigmas or Jake, any beers you've had lately that you've enjoyed?
Hopewell recently launched the Missouri market, and so I got to go down there and help kind of launch the.
It's your old stomping ground, right?
Yeah, I'm from St. Louis, so it was a cool moment that we've been trying to make happen for a long time now. So it was cool to actually launch and see the response. And there's a ton of great breweries down in St. Louis. That's well-trodden territory. But a new brewery that opened up down there called Blue Jay. I believe, correct, I hope I get these facts right, but I believe that the guy who started it, or one of the guys who started it, used to be the head brewer at Urban Chestnut, and they're focusing in on lagers. And I know that's kind of that in itself can be sort of trendy, I think, right now. But these guys, trends aside, were turning out truly fantastic lagers. Everything I had was amazing. Definitely a highlight of the last year or so for me for new breweries. Yeah, highly recommend anyone who's down there to check it. Yeah, they're kind of in the downtown-ish area. But yeah, next time anyone's going down there, I highly recommend it. Or if you're in St. Louis and haven't been yet, yeah, they're the real deal.
May I ask you a personal question? Spending time launching Hopewell in St. Louis or in Missouri, what Hopewell beer pairs best with T-Ravs?
Oh gosh.
And for the uninitiated out there, what is a T-Rav?
Toasted ravioli.
Toasted ravioli.
Okay.
Which is actually a deep fried ravioli.
We don't call it fried ravioli. We call it toasted ravioli.
Yeah.
You gotta throw
Toasted with oil.
a little buddy. We'll say a little buddy.
Little buddy and T-Ravs.
Just a nice, dry, zippy lager, I think, because you're going to get a ton of that. You know, it's fried food, right? What goes well with fried food better than nice, easy drinking lager, yeah.
And then what about some emos?
Oh, man, I don't drink anything with emos. I just bask in the glory of the best pizza in the world. Yeah,
Gross.
Get the letter. I want people to write letters to me. If you talk any nonsense about Emo's Pizza, I'll be coming after you.
Is that the big one down there?
That's like the big chain, the St. Louis.
It's a chain,
pizza.
right?
Yeah.
That's the only place I think I've had it from.
Yeah.
The St. Louis style with that Provel cheese.
Yeah, it's a processed cheese it's a blend of cheddar, provolone, and mozzarella.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know it's a beer podcast, but I'll take a moment to give my experience with it. We got it and brought it back to our hotel, and I had one slice. It was real hot, and I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty good. Okay. Then I think I had I was maybe a third in to my second slice, and I think it had just started to cool enough, and like my mouth went, like my teeth went into the cheese, and then I could feel the cheese kind of like squishing down, like you know, like if you put like your fingers, like imagine your hands spread open and you push it into mud, and the mud kind of like oozes through your fingers, like the cheese did that, and it even like took me like another like one bite after that, and I was like, whoa, that's weird. And then I had another one, and I was like, nope, literally cannot have another bite of this.
What were the
my
toppings?
mouth.
What were the toppings?
I don't remember.
I will say it's a very toppings dependent pizza. There's some I won't touch. There's like certain toppings and the toppings are bacon and sausage. That's the best combo at Emo's. Don't mess with what's that?
Or and. Bacon
both,
and?
both. Bacon and sausage.
Okay.
It pairs really well with the cheese. I'm not joking.
I'm not
joking.
mean-
Pepperoni is trash on Emo's. I'll grant people that. That's a bad topping, which, probably.
It wasn't the topping that disturbed me. It was the cheese. It was the cheese and the texture of the cheese as it began to coagulate.
Right, it's a processed cheese. It's going to have that similar, like if you have like a
Velveeta.
exactly, like a grilled cheese. It's like really molten hot, and then like you let it sit for like a minute, it starts to like already recongeal or whatever. That's what happens. I love it.
Right.
Yeah, I had to,
The recongealing.
all of my experiences have been more
Took me by
more like
surprise.
yours than Chris than
Sure.
other experience,
Okay.
better experiences, I suppose.
Okay.
I've only had it like cold at beer events where I'm like, what is this? And how is it doing this? Anyway,
Let me think if there's a beer that I've had that I've really enjoyed lately. Well, I usually just go back to what's on my. Okay, so this isn't a beer, but I had with you, Mike, on Saturday. I had a bottle of Farnham Hill cider.
Oh yeah.
And it was lovely. It was very, very nice, and just really kind of bone dry, earthy, and just lovely. And
They do a good job.
yeah, they do. And I have to kind of remember that sort of stuff when I'm looking for something that's in that like special category, but not too special that you don't just like aren't just going to open it up whenever you feel like it and not worry if you don't finish the entire bottle even. It kind of like slides in that spot very, very nicely.
Yeah, those styles of ciders, kind of like more rustic, farmhousey ciders, are things that I don't drink for a really long time. Then I have one, I'm like, oh, I forgot I love this. I drink a bunch of it, and then I just forget about it again for like a year and a half.
I know. And Farnham Hill's one of the best, I'd say.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anything for you, Zigmas, that you've had lately?
I was just pulling up a picture of Jake's tank beer that I had the other
Very
day.
nice.
Oh, the lacing is what I'm showing.
Lacing
in a visual
pictures.
medium.
Okay, yes.
Not an audio medium, but that one's really great. I had that the other day, and I've been drinking a lot of Hopewell Sharp pours up in Highwood.
You might be the only spot doing sharp pours sharp right now because we
Yeah.
kicked it at Hopewell like really quickly. It's our Japanese lager for those listening. And actually, Zigmas, we're going to talk about dispense, but yeah, Zigmas is he trained our staff at Hopewell on lucre pouring, and we learned about the sharp pour from him as well, which has been exciting to kind of bring that stuff to Hopewell, and the drinkers have been really responding to it.
Yeah, I remember John. Well, we'll get into it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into it. We'll get into that. So, awesome. So, let's start with some comings and goings. There was a
The
big
regular segment with all the comings, and
yeah. There was a big go. Whoa, you're gonna open up, and then we'll have one.
we'll have one. Yeah,
Yeah, it'll be great.
let's go.
There you go.
That'll basically outweigh the one we're talking about now
Yeah,
in volume for sure.
yeah. The goings. So, Lagunitas, their massive brewery, biggest brewery in the state, closing. I think they were set up to have dual 250-barrel brew houses. I don't know if the second one ever came online, but
I'm
they
pretty
were.
sure it didn't.
It didn't, yeah. It certainly isn't online now, or won't be, because they're shutting the whole place down.
Brewing operations are continuing through August, I believe, is what they said, but the tap room is closed immediately. And I think what they're doing is just running through raw ingredients that they have already purchased.
Right. That's probably cheaper to make them there than to ship them somewhere
Yeah.
else.
Probably.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it says a lot about what's gone on with that brewery. I mean, I think at one point they were making, I think it said, well, I don't know about just there, but they're brewing like over 1 million over 1 million barrels a year.
Combined, right? Not there.
Yeah, I think combined. But they're down. I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny. It is not funny, but they're down a lot, like down 20%. And also they were brewing all of Newcastle Brown, and they went from 1 million cases to in 2018 or something like that to 80,000. Yikes! In 2023.
That was one of the weirdest moves ever. Like they moved it to Lagunitas. They changed the bottle size so it could fit in their bottling line, and then they changed the recipe. So I mean, they were trying to murder Newcastle. Not that it was like a great beer anymore to begin with, but that step was definitely a gateway beer for a lot of people at a certain point. They just killed it. Like, they changed everything about
it.
in a way that like you usually don't see breweries that size do that type of thing.
So according to a friend of the show, Kate Bernat, the Trib reported in 2016 that Lagunitas was making just over 400,000 barrels from the Chicago facility. So
that's a lot.
That's a lot. That is a lot. Yeah. So, man, I mean, the times they are changing, huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else? I know I'm kind of turned away from it. Let me turn to everybody. Yeah, I don't know if either of you have a feeling one way or another. I was going to talk a lot about when Tony McGee was on episode number 7. I think we might be at like 327 by now.
Wow.
And so a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And I decided after having listened to like the first half of it that we have to devote more time. I think we should probably do a whole show on that episode because that guy he still sounds like a visionary now. It's pretty interesting listening to what he said and who knows what he was actually thinking when he said that stuff. But
right, because it was 3 weeks before he sold. And one thing I remember him saying is he had lunch with Budweiser and told them he'd rather put his thumbs through his eyes than sell to Budweiser.
Yes.
Then 3 weeks later, he sells to Heineken.
Well, exactly.
Right,
exactly. Yeah, who knows? He also did mention, which I had forgotten about, he was talking about how he's from the future, and moments later talked about how he thought that eventually craft beer would have the similar kind of market presence as Mexican beers do now. And he's like, and then I think Mexican beers are going to have the same market presence as Bub Miller Coors in about 10 years. And I think just this past month it was announced that Modelo and Corona leading the way. But
so he was off by 6 months, so it's not that impressive.
Well, I mean, maybe they still will be that next year, I mean, and that wasn't something that was on anyone's horizon. Nobody was talking about that in those terms. Yeah, so pretty interesting to listen to it. So I think we should probably have a revisit with Mr. McGee. But
get him back on the show.
I could ask.
Yeah,
I mean. There was another article on Good Beer Hunting about how he's basically become a mystery. Like he's just gone and he doesn't talk to anyone. No one's heard from him or anything. So
I mean, if you sold your company for $1 billion, would anyone ever see you again?
I'd like to think I'd still be here doing the show with you.
I can tell you, if I sold Iswas for $1 billion,
I'll
probably not doing the podcast every week.
You know who wouldn't be here? I won't say who.
I mean,
but I just say I would have the Fade Master 5000.
I mean, there would be signs. Yeah, he's got the
AI.
He's got those Chelsea boots on. They just got.
Yeah.
Maybe he already got the $1 billion.
The
Still here.
AI is big in the Fade game right now.
That's the meanest thing you've ever said to anyone on their show. That you replaced Surge.
If I had $1 billion,
you could never. $1 billion couldn't replace Surge.
Well, I'd try.
Yeah. We both, you and me both.
There you go. That's the meanest thing. Okay. So nobody seems to give a shit about Lagunitas.
When's the last time anyone here had a Lagunitas beer?
Well, then we could talk about that. About how they're not
Probably
relevant
ordered
anymore.
One case in 6 years of business.
Yeah.
So it's probably hop water.
Yeah, Hopwater. We moved through Hopwater. Their Hopwater still does pretty well. I don't know if we carry it anymore because we're bringing, we do Sierra Nevada and Rev, and we just have better relationships with both those breweries. But Lagunitas still has one of the best Hopwaters, I would say. But,
Sure.
But I mean,
I think that's the only thing I've ever had. I've had for them in the last 8, 9 years, since.
Really?
Yeah, since he was on the show.
really,
And yeah, I mean, why?
Yeah,
Name. I can't think of one thing they make that there isn't a better equivalent from a local brewery or from a brewery I care about more.
I think what's most remarkable about the closing is how, people's lost jobs aside, is how unremarkable the closing is from a cultural standpoint in the Chicago scene. They were, I think they never really intended to be considered like a Chicago brewery. I think they wanted to maintain, this was just basically a production facility. And Chris, we were talking about this off pod a little bit, but this seems just like a very ho-hum business decision. It's not like we're going to have any less access to Lagunitas here in Chicago, right? So from that standpoint, it's to me, it's like just another symptom of kind of the consolidation and the overall markets, the industries striving towards efficiency, right?
right? And some of this multinationalization of craft beer, how some of these big boys have come in and bought it. Another thing that was definitely talked about early on in this show, and something that I was kind of often up on a soapbox about was, things are going to change. I know the big thing is nothing's going to change. We've learned from the past. They bought us because they want us not to change, all those things. But no, they do change. How much, you don't know. I mean, I think there's some examples of some pretty good acquisitions from a multinational where it doesn't seem like things have outwardly changed, outside of how the general industry has changed, because the general industry has changed too. So you would expect that the breweries to change. But we had Mr. Brynelson on a couple weeks ago, and they were bought by Duvel Mortgott, and I would say that they've stayed within the goalposts.
Yeah,
I would say.
Killing Pale 31 aside, they've gotten better.
I mean,
their beers rock.
I mean, I don't know if they've gotten better, but I don't think they've gotten worse.
Definitely not.
And who knows what they would be doing now had they not been with Duvel, and it's impossible to say. But I still think they're relevant, and I still am interested in the beers they put out. And XPA is one of the best beers I've had recently. So I mean, and that's from them. So good on them. But I think what seems to be more common is the Lagunitas. We talked about Marston's getting the Burton Union shut down from Carlsberg unceremoniously, which is why I wanted to bring it up. Just kind of like how this was just unceremoniously, the largest brewery in the state just is gone. And I mean, it's interesting. They never made themselves part of the Chicago scene, right? Isn't that kind of weird? In hindsight now?
I don't know. I mean, I guess, but there was no
I think
figure.
I think it's weird.
There was no local figurehead for it, right? That's how you become part of a scene, is that there's some individual that kind of takes on the mantle of this is the person for this place, and they're at events. There was no one like that. There was no person or group of people that we recognize as those are the Lagunitas guys or gals or people,
and they're great.
And here they're at this event, and they're showing up to smaller breweries events and stuff. It just wasn't like that because they were already a machine. I don't know. I've worked with a lot of people from there, and they're like it's a machine. Like it's not like it's a different entity than what Hopewell is or is or even like Half Acre is. Like it's a wholly different operation, and the fact
but still you can so Goose Island is not as big as Lagunitas, and they're owned by a giant company.
they
but
started here.
Yeah,
So
but
they've been here since 1989.
but
88.
they've definitely, even as a lot of their brewing operations have moved out of Chicago, have I think almost like put more effort into being like a Chicago brewery and having it feel like the hometown brewery here. Like they've definitely made an effort to kind of reach out to the local community and sponsor things and do all sorts of stuff like that, and obviously be at sports teams and stuff like that. But what I was saying to Jake earlier today in our super secret convo was what about all the Asheville breweries or the breweries that have opened up, like East Coast breweries? Like, are they just like not a part of the community there? I don't live out there, so I guess I don't know. But the one I do know is Sierra Nevada, and they are very much a part of the community there.
I think those are fundamentally different approaches to business. Sierra Nevada,
I agree.
Like is
I totally
still
agree.
an independent brewery that has values other than bottom line, and that reflects in their desire to be part of the community or their desire to be sustainable or greener than they were before. Like Lagunitas isn't, to my perception, and certainly wasn't in Chicago, anything other than a factory where they made beer widgets.
Yes, but it still is. It still is craft beer, as Heineken would say, I'd imagine, and there's probably different, lifestyle brands or elements to that culture, craft beer culture, and stuff like that. And like, wouldn't they want to? And Lagunitas was like dripping in craft beer culture. They were like one of the leaders of craft beer
a
culture.
lot of it came from things they were doing.
And for Heineken to not just like to not care about it at all. Maybe it's the same in California. I mean, maybe they haven't done anything there as well. But it is crazy that the largest brewery in the state, which happens to be a craft brewery, I'll call it a craft brewery, and we're not going by BA definitions, is closing, and something like 86 people lost their job, and there was much more talk about Metropolitan, for example, closing, a much smaller brewery. Now, they've been around here longer, they're from here and stuff like that. Much more talk about that than Lagunitas. So it's just, it says something. I'm not saying necessarily good or bad, but when I step back and think about it, it's surprising how little impact they've made, and it seems like it was a choice, just to not give a shit. Sure. Which
Sure.
and I guess you reap what you sow, and I'm sure the people at Heineken are crying themselves to sleep on their
I mean, how much would
piles of euros.
would it have even moved the needle if they did try to be more a Chicago spot? Because I would argue that it probably wouldn't have any impact on that. I don't think there's enough Chicagoans that would have righted that ship of whatever was going wrong with Lagunitas overall as a company, right?
Oh, for sure, right.
So what does it even mean for them to have been? I mean, I think it's more. It's interesting from like a cultural perspective of like why they decided not to do that. They decided to go big beer. You talk about like Goose Island being at Budweiser plants. they kind of viewed it as like the way Anheuser-Busch views their various plants. They're not, they only identify really St. Louis is like they're an AB town. I'm sure you're not seeing other towns that have AB plants being like, we're an AB town, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was that marketing thing they did where like, we are your local brewery, right? And that kind of to me feels similar to this, like being like, it's the largest brewery in the state. I'm like, yeah, it's just a factory. Like it doesn't have the same soul as like a lot as Metropolitan, right? Like, and that like it just doesn't have the same soul as a lot of breweries started by knowable people in Chicago that just wanted to do something interesting for their life, rather than this like thing that very obviously at some point became a economic entity more than it was something trying to create interesting flavors or interesting experiences.
Do you think if Tony McGee hadn't gone the way of Hughes? What's his name?
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes
Are you saying
gone the
he's
way of
saving his
Howard
urine
Hughes?
and his fingernail clippings?
Not necessarily. I'm not saying he isn't.
You're saying he's not. You're saying he's not visible in the company anymore.
Yeah, that he's just kind of has disappeared from public sight. Do you think if that hadn't happened, that we'd be thinking of this differently, or could that have moved the needle? Could like him still being a active and just out there part of Lagunitas, could that have moved the needle? Or is it too much even now for a personality?
Maybe, but I mean, what influence do you think he really had? Like when you look at the companies that get sold like that to a multinational company, like what's he really going to do anyway? He could be a public figurehead, which maybe would have made it more personable and more like
who knows what his role could have
personified
been.
the brand more, but. Yeah. I don't think he would have been able to change the decision of closing down and the Chicago plant, people losing their jobs, right? Like he didn't control the company anymore. So,
right, could have it maybe not come to that?
I doubt it.
Okay.
I don't think. I mean, maybe
I'm not saying that he could have kept it open even if it was losing money and didn't make sense. I don't think.
No way.
No, not that. But
maybe they would have felt like more of a presence and part of the Chicago scene if he was out and publicly here because he's from Chicago, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, what different? I don't think it wouldn't have made a difference in this, right? Maybe people would have felt a little bit sadder that it was closing, other than the loss of the jobs and people's lives being changed. But I don't think Tony McGee being like visible would have saved Chicago Lagunitas.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have. We did talk. Well, should we talk about the imports and the premium? And we talked about it a little bit, or should we get right into the meat and potatoes of?
Let's get into the meat.
Okay. Should we take a break first, or you want to just go? Just dive right in.
Let's get into the T-Ravs of the episode here.
Yeah, let's get into the T-Ravs.
Get into that bacon sausage.
Why don't we refresh
quick break and
our beers? By the way, you should show your friend the glass that I have just been drinking from.
What beer was that?
This was Maine Peeper. So
Maine.
There you go.
Dang.
I'd say it's
Also Maine Peeper.
Yeah, there you go.
Chris is better at lacing.
I swirl. That's what that kills lacing.
Yeah, that will kill. So anyway, lacing aside, for the Patreon, stay tuned. Don't go away because I will for the next 5 minutes describe in exacting detail what the lacing looks like on this glass. All right, so long.
And we're back. Welcome back to the Beer Temple podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike Shalau, with your other co-host, Chris Quinn. And we are joined with Hot Take Jake of Hopewell Brewing and Zigmas Maloni of Beermiscuous. Mm-hmm. And we are about to get into the meat. The toasted T-Rav. The bacon and sausage emos. What you guys wanted us to talk about. Dispensing methods.
Yeah. Why everyone tuned in. Why everyone tunes in every week.
Yeah.
Hoping. Bated breath. Edge of seat.
When are they going to talk about dispensing methods?
Right.
And here we are.
So,
you're welcome.
Originally, I don't know how. Well, we don't have to go into all that. But Mike and I are going to be playing somewhat. We'll be doing a little bit of a not quite a counterpoint type
Sure.
thing. But we've got two solidly pro dispense people, so I think we're going to have to be. It's going to be hard, Mike. We're going to have to be curmudgeons, okay?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean,
So
I'm
that's the
also
role.
I'm in my real life. I'm pro these methods.
Well, then fine. It can be 3-on-1.
I
if,
can-
if you're going to wimp out, then
Why would I whip? I'm not wimping out. You just don't like.
Mike's not going to care at all about dispense method at his spot.
No, you'll pop bottles. It'll be foamy as hell,
Hell
and
yeah,
you'll
let's
like
go.
it.
I love it.
Right.
I already,
all
I
the
already
bottle-
love it.
all the
Mike.
bottles will gush, and
you're thinking of it wrong. You're thinking of it wrong, Mike.
My bad.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about dispense, right? We're going to and
Specifically, like draft dispensing, and
Yeah.
newer kind of methods.
specifically, but not maybe exclusively. I mean, it goes into, pouring from a bottle in a special way or something like that. I think that's legit.
So essentially, like dispensing as presentation.
Yeah. Or
Does it
is
make a quantitative?
I think
qualitative
these are the things we're going
difference?
to talk about. Yeah.
All
Is
right.
it just presentation? What is it? How
Is-
does it matter?
Does presentation present the actual qualitative analysis of something?
Yeah.
Maybe it does.
I don't know. So why don't we start there? Why don't we give it to the pros? Does dispense matter? And if so, why does it matter?
Well, it's just physics, that's all. So you're manipulating the carbonation of that beer by pouring it differently. It's really simple.
Okay.
So you were talking to me.
See you next week.
You were talking to me earlier specifically about Lucers and how you have this idea of different points of turbulence and the effects they have. Will you talk a little bit about that and how that could affect the presentation and then perception of the beer?
Yeah, essentially for the Lucre, you got the ball valve that you turn with the handle, which that's designed to turn very easily, and you have a lot of control over that ball valve that's happening.
A ball valve, almost kind of like you would have on like a spigot when you kind of turn it and the ball kind of opens up and the hole in the ball kind of is aligned with the pipe. Am I thinking of it the right way?
That's a ball valve, but this one's just easier to open up partially. So you're
Okay,
opening
but
up very
mechanically
smoothly.
similar.
Yeah, very smoothly. But you're opening that, and when there's just a little bit of opening, you're going to create turbulence in the foam. That's a point of where that foam is going to break out. The carbonation is going to break out into foam. And then there's also a little micro mesh screen on that Lucre that organizes that chaotic foam into a smaller bubble. So those micro mesh screens have the smaller bubble, and that is just the denser, more organized foam. So I think it's just a better foam overall when you use that.
Right. And then, that's what it's obviously you have the introduction of nitrogen with nitro faucets, but that's kind of what they're doing as well, is they're kind of like breaking out the beer and
Is it nitrogen? When you have a nitrogen, doesn't it explode? And that creates the bubble. Like the bubble is still a CO2 bubble. The nitrogen is just pushing it at high pressure to make that happen.
I don't know.
I only know this because I put a Lucre on a beer engine, and
Sure.
it did not get the same type of foam. I'm getting on another one.
Well, I think there's a lot of debate about what it is. I certainly think that I don't know if it's I don't know one way or another. I didn't necessarily think, but
is a
I'm not
smaller
the
bubble.
expert.
Well, nitrogen is almost not soluble in liquid at all, so that's why you see that cascading effect. And then the
Right.
things that actually sit on the top of the cap of that is actually CO2.
Perhaps.
That's my understanding of it.
Right. So in cask, when you put a sparkler on, you can even have different sparkler types that'll have like a more like the the holes that the beer is kind of shot through are different. So you can buy different sparklers for it, and that kind of does the same thing, and it introduces air and perhaps I would imagine nitrogen, because you get a cascade from cask.
How would it?
Absolutely, you
how-
100%.
Yeah, you get
do.
the cascade, but that's not from nitrogen. There's no nitrogen in the beer.
There's nitrogen in the atmosphere.
Sure.
I don't know, man. This is
A bunch of scientists talking about it.
No, but I mean, I didn't. I'm not the first person to posit that. I will say that. I might be the second person, but no. But I mean, it's I don't know. It's introduction of something. Now, what's in those bubbles? You know, I don't know if anyone's ever popped a bubble and kind of like taken a sample of those tiny
Each
little bubbles.
individual bubble.
Right, exactly, and taken the composition of it. But, yeah, I mean, I do know that the cask foam on a sparkler, specifically on a sparkler, is very similar to this, you know, to the nitrogen foam from a nitro dispense. And I don't know why. I don't know. Well, there's nitrogen in the air, so it's a hot take. There you go. I mean, if you just put one of those beers, if you built a sparkler that went over a CO2 draft where there's no air getting in and it's just shooting it through there, you'd probably put a lot of stress on your draft system. But like, I don't know, would it cascade if you did that? I don't know.
If only we had a place that had a sparkler and a draft system, we could do this.
And a cask engine that literally just broke when we were pouring these two. So it's like pouring cask beer on my
You're just
floor.
trying to find the extremes and the edges of how you can put this beer.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Breaking my beer engine. Yeah.
Well, Chris, you're you claim to be a dispense skeptic, and yet you have a cask engine.
I claim to be
Yeah, you don't think most of these dispensing methods change how they're perceived or
Good.
Are of actual
I'm learning.
value?
I'm learning about who's on my side on this.
I'm just trying to
debate.
make an
That's
interesting
good.
conversation.
Right.
No one's on anyone's side except I'm.
There are no
against you.
teams. You're like Royal Tannenbaum.
Yeah, right.
You're about to
Well,
shoot
no,
me.
because people that listen to the show know that you are skeptical of Lucers as actually creating wet foam or any of this like type of like different new dispensing methods that have popped up in the last couple of years being of any actual like qualitative value difference. But is that am I mischaracterizing your opinion?
Yeah,
of it?
I think there's subtle nuances to it. Like, I don't have a all or nothing approach. I just think I'm on a different part of the bandwidth than others, and
You're just not as excited about it as some people are. You have more.
Yes,
more
well,
of a
that's true.
tempered sort of like, oh yeah, you know the difference, but you're not necessarily going to freak out when you see a Luker faucet pouring because it's
just
So you're more of railing against the sort of like response or the people like geeking out about dispense method as like the new kind of thing that people are geeking out about.
well.
Like it's overblown to you. Is that the
That is fair to say. I think that is overblown. And I think, yeah, so that's, I guess, the crux of it is one side would say it's overblown. It's not that qualitatively important. Well, there's limits to its qualitative importance. And my limit is here. I would say everybody would say that there's limits. Like, you're not going to take literally the worst beer ever made and at some point through dispense make it taste like the best beer ever made. That would be its limitless.
They pour PBR on Lucers in Brooklyn.
Yeah, and
Not
charge
that PBR
a lot
is
of
the
money
worst
for
beer.
it, and
Yeah.
charge more money for it.
Milko
So
PBRs.
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
So, but we'll get to kind of that. I don't want to
Okay.
jump everywhere all at once, but so yeah, I think Mike, you and I both think that dispense is quite important.
Yeah.
I mean, I had my draft system. I put a lot of care into it, and I want my beer to pour. I'll start from there. I mean, I think even financially, financially, it's very important. I think, if your draft system is out of line, you can lose a lot of money. I think you can leave money on the table if you don't have any foam if you're kind of over pouring your beers, and there's absolutely no foam. I think if it's all foam and you're just dumping stuff down the drain like they do at the ball game and stuff like that, obviously you're losing a lot of money there. So it's important for economic reasons like that. Also, it's appealing, I think. Foam looks good on beer. So I personally like beer to have some foam on it when it's appropriate. So yeah, it's not that I'm anti well dispensed beer.
Yeah, no. If that was what it seemed like I was presenting, I don't believe that about you.
Yeah. No,
I think you find new methods of dispensing can often be co-opted by people who don't really believe in the method, but think they're gimmicky, and you see that and dislike that.
If that's true, I would say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Is that the saying?
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. I got the saying right, but yeah, I think there is like,
when the baby's done taking a bath, you throw out the bathwater.
Yeah,
Don't throw out the baby.
I mean,
The bathwater's bad.
Write that down, Serge.
I'm on the same page as you all. I think dispense and presentation is like highly important to bringing the experience like to a full say there's that saying in like Czech Republic where the brewer brews the beer, the tapster makes it, the tapster being the bartender. But I think there is that last step that is really key in like the experience of drinking a beer. If you don't pour it properly, and you could say there's properly in different contexts might mean different things, right? If we pour on a Luker, we're going to go for a different pour than if we're pouring a Japanese sharp pour or what have you. That's extremely important. I think what you're hinting at is Lukers have become, for people who don't know at home, are the Czech style side pull faucets with which you can have a great deal of control over foam and creating what we call wet foam or dense foam, really creamy foam, kind of similar to cask or nitro beer. And I think that is really a good experience. But I think when people have kind of glommed on to that as being a really trendy thing, and now you see some spots that might have a couple Luker faucets, but they're all pouring them like they're normal faucets, which is to say like a standard like Perlick or just a standard beer dispensing faucet, and you've just spent excess of maybe $200-300 on a faucet, and you're not even gaining any of the benefits that faucet can present. So that I would, if that's what you're trying to hint at, I agree. Like, I think there's, it's not enough to have the faucet. There's got to be intention behind it. And that's, Zigmas can talk much more about that and more eloquently than I can. But that's kind of where I'm at.
So Zigmas, you had such a concise and kind of matter-of-fact way of talking about it. It's just a way of breaking carbonation out and either stripping or leaving in carbonation into the finished product in your glass. But you've got expound on why something that like simply stated is so important, because you have really taken it to heart. You've given like you've talked about it. I don't know if you call it a lecture or not, but you've trained other places. You've offered your services to talk about all these things. So you're very much a like ambassador in this area for certainly the Luker, if not for other types of dispense. So why is the ability to break carbonation out of beer? Why should anyone care?
Well, it really does make a difference, and you can kind of taste side by side. A regular pour that you're going to pair pour in the American style versus like a traditional Czech pour, where those Lukers are kind of designed to serve one way, and Luker wants you to serve one way. But if you're a beer shop, like me, I want to serve the way the brewery does. So I have all the methods remembered and serviced, and we can totally play with them and recreate that style. Just like you're recreating a Czech Pils, that you're not in Czech Republic, you're in Chicago. you're making a check bills, that same way you could do it, you can extend that to the service model in the pouring in the faucet in the way they might do. They might serve it in Prague or.
So what do you mean?
Budweiser.
Like, I don't quite. I didn't.
The model of serving is the same extension as recreating that same beer style and brewing it. So that's just another part of that service model. You can pour a glass of, or you can pour a can into a glass and it creates something. But pouring with intention, pouring with the faucet, and having the service model of being like you're in a bar or you're in a tap room, that's also a valuable thing too. And I think that's part of it. Like recreating that check model of service is beneficial to that whole experience overall. So it's not just the beer. The beer liquid should be good. Like that's pretty standard for a lot of the up class bars like this. You need a beer that tastes good, that has a good finish, but serving it will make it extra better off the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, or perhaps more authentic to the place of origin that
Sure,
this
yeah.
style is, if not literally of replicated by.
Yeah.
Sure, but I mean, okay, then I would agree with that. But even that isn't homogenous because if you look at there's like Budweiser, and their serving method, their check, is bananas. They have literally a faucet of like jetting foam that they just fill up cups with foam, and then they set them aside, and then they do a 3-stage fill on it, and you basically have a beer that has this huge like muffin top coming out of it in a dimple mug, and that's how they serve it.
That's an adaptation.
That sounds badass.
It's an adaptation.
It's
Sure.
an adaptation for that particular bar. So that's that brew pub trying to serve 1,000 people at a time. So they ended up doing a 3-step. Now Trifkat, I think, is in the check three times.
Yeah, and the place that I was talking about was in Austria. Who does it?
Schneider.
Yeah, that place. So
Swiss House.
Yeah.
In Vienna, serving
Yeah.
Czech beer.
right, and I mean I don't know. I mean that's cool. I mean you can. I think those are all neat and unique. Is that to say that doing a slow pour of a Czech beer is bad, or the American style pour, or anything? And how is it, in what ways is it additive to take a side pull versus a slow pour versus just a regular American pour, I'll call it. I don't even know if that's fair to call it that, but that's what we'll call it for now, where it's just, you just fill it out and you leave a finger or two of foam at the top and then you serve it to the person. Like...
Yeah, that's a very American way of thinking. Just like the Brewers Association recommends 8 seconds a pint. That's pretty slow if you're trying to film it like I try to do all the time. That is an age of beer pouring that just not very interesting. It doesn't end up very interesting. It might look good in the glass, but then when you get down further, that foam's not going to stick around. The head retention relies on the brewer doing that head retention. I don't think it's not as good, but it's part of the culture, so that's something you can recreate somewhere else. But we're in America, so we gather a lot of different styles from Belgium too. Belgium is a great beer culture that they have a pouring intention on their own. Amsterdam with the the Stella sacrifice and bar knife scoop. That's part of
Sure.
the tradition too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's a lot of places that do the bar scoop, kind of like, what do you call it? Like, taking the blade and scraping it across the top. And I've seen an old Irish cask ale where they're taking it and sorting it off, sabering it. We'll call it savoring the head of the beer.
Are there like with these different dispensing methods, is there control over like textural or flavor components at the point of dispensing that you can do with these newer faucets that you couldn't do with like the American like classic pour? Or is that overblown?
No, the American faucet is designed to pour beer in a glass in a manageable way so that anybody can do it, which is fine. That's part of the tradition. But if you're going to a special place, they might have a bartender that's trained to do it. And I think that's important for most draft people is they should know how to pour a beer. And if it's the model of whatever the bar is, not to waste beer or to get a perfect, 1.5 inches, 2 inches of foam on there. So it looks nice when they get to the customer. I think that's a good intentional thing that you should always try to have. Every bartender pouring your beer should be more specialized in that part, but you can go even further. So that's just a natural craft thing to do, I think, is go further and have this is why we do it. We're doing a liquor pour. We're going to have 3 fingers of foam on there. It's going to have regular beer underneath that foam cap, so it's regular carbonated beer, but there's the thick foam on top that is more aromatic. It looks cool. It turns heads, especially if you're familiar with just the one finger head. That really does turn heads. And then you ask the bartender, "Why did you do that to me? Why did you cheat me out of beer?" Like, no, you're still getting the beer you paid for. You're still getting that half liter, but the glass is made to accommodate the foam.
Sure. I'm just curious if. They do look nice. It's perfectly presented. It's flat across the top. It doesn't kind of crop up over the top of the glass, and it has a very distinct kind of cool look to it. And it's a stable foam as well. We were pouring some today. And, yeah, I think it has a tighter bubble to it. The
Lucre you're talking about.
The Lucre, yeah, this Czech-style faucet, right? But I would probably say there's a lot of German brewers and bars out there who would say that it's not necessarily an elevated, but a different method of dispense. And they like to do it a little bit different. They like to take some of the carbonation out. They do the slow pour would maybe be the German pour, we'll call it.
Two-step pour.
And they pour it, they let it foam up, they let it kind of subside, stabilize, and fill it back up, which has been also kind of like what craft people have been teaching for a long time as well. That was in Randy Mosher's book.
Pour, yeah.
Exactly.
That was something I learned way before I even knew what a slow pour was. When I read that book, I was like, oh, and I've been pouring beer like that for the most part at home, the Randy Mosher method, and like Zigmas has said, it's really just a manipulation of the carbonation, right? And that's why cask beer, nitro beer goes down so smooth is the just the low levels of carbonation. If you're breaking that out, it's going to taste smoother. You're not having the prickliness of the CO2 bubbles like scraping across your tongue. Now, knowing that, there are certain beers that's not appropriate for at all. There's certain beers we want to retain carbonation as much as possible. So for us, it's at Hopewell, it's about addressing each beer sort of on its own terms. Not saying the Lucre is going to make every beer better. It's going to change a beer, but is that the best way to dispense it for us? Not necessarily. So, we only have 2 of our 10 taps are Lucres, and we make sure we pour in beers that we feel good about that method. Otherwise, we're using just straight up American flow control faucets that are nice. They can do good things for us. They can themselves create wet foam at a certain point. They're harder to manage than a Lucre. Lucre is like a really nice just a faucet in general. It's a little bit easier to manipulate and get quick pours out of. So I think that's one of the advantages of a Lucre is the speed with which you can do that stuff. Where if you're playing with on a regular American faucet, it's like, oh my God, I'm like, you can get there, but do you want to be behind the bar for a minute and a half trying to like figure that out? No, it's at the end of the day, we're a bar. We're trying to get the beers out. So
between the Lucre and the Japanese sharp like pour and the American dispense faucet, like how do you guys choose which beers you should present in which ways? Like what characteristics of the beer you're going to put on tap for a Lucre, for the Japanese faucet, and
I want to add a caveat to that. After you're done,
yeah. For the American pour, like what do you look for to be like I should do this thing on this one on this way, and this thing in this way?
Other than the origin of the beer style,
Sure, right.
Yeah, well, I will say we just started the sharp
Good
pour.
caveat.
We just started the sharp pour with our Japanese lager, and that was the reason behind that is just to sort of explore and see what people were excited about at our tap room. And the more we do experiment with dispense methods, the more people are interested. And larger kind of story here is that we think that's sort of. I talked about this in the predictions episode. That presentation is kind of the next frontier of the mature craft brewing scene, and just like, again, it's one thing to spend all this time and all this effort devising the recipe, doing all this work around ingredients and all this stuff, and then to not care about how it gets presented to the customer at your tap room. Obviously, there's limits to what you can control from your partners who pour your beer. But what we can control is the tap room, so we're going to make sure we're doing that to the best of our abilities. And I will say we generally only do 3 different pouring styles. We have the standard, call it American pour. We have the slow pour, that's for our Hopewell pills, and that beer has been designed to read well off of a slow pour. Reason being, slow pour again knocks out carbonation. Builds a nice foam cap that lasts through the duration of the drink. We brew an intentionally more bitter Pilsner, knowing that once we knock out that CO2, it's going to soften up, right? Now there is a little bit of a give and take because 99.9% of that beer is going to be drank not in the slow pour method, but it goes good both. It tastes good both ways, but for us, we think it gets heightened by that. But as far as how we decide, it's we're new to the Lucre thing, so now we're looking at beers coming through our pipeline, and we've only poured lagers or malt forward lagers on our Lucre faucets because that's what we think it does well. Is accentuates maltiness, softens the beer, makes it a little more drinkable. We were pouring our pills as a slow pour off our Lucre, but we thought it just kind of wasn't working right, so we went back to our Micromatics. And for us, it comes down to experimentation, and we don't have the answers 100% all the time.
When you say it wasn't working right, what happened? Why wouldn't a dispense method work?
The Lucre, right? I don't think is as good on the slow pour. We call it the Bierstadt method, even though they pour theirs off
on
Lucre.
A slow pour. Oh, you're trying to do a slow pour on a Lucre.
Yeah, which places do. We found that we got a better head retention off of the Micromatic. And maybe that's a way that we approached it. But, again, like I said, we're not dogmatic about it. We're always willing to experiment. So we're playing around all the time with okay, maybe we pour it this way, try that out. So, we play around.
Okay. Let me then put this out there. I think that there is an importance to having foam in the beer. I think that it is attractive, and I think in some cases it's important to knock out the carbonation. But I would say at least as much, if not more, is for eye appeal and to kind of sell the beer with your eye. More than this dispense, this look, but achieved a different way, is markedly inferior. I think cask you could make some pretty significant arguments with cask, but I'd say with beer that is like carbonated beer, highly carbonated beer,
Keg to beer.
Yeah, or bottled beer. Something like Duvel is doing this thing like the perfect pour Duvel, and they show you how to pour it and stuff like that. And it's basically supposed to be, about half and half, like the glass that they designed to carry the foam. I mean, that's why that glass exists. Mm-hmm. They want you to knock out that much foam, and they want it to stick around, and they want it to be part of the experience and to have this kind of look to it. And I think that it's, one, looks cooler, right? And two, makes the beer more drinkable because that beer is highly carbonated and needs to be in a very thick glass bottle, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's important. for that reason. But like, you know, I don't know if beyond that it really matters that much. And I want you guys to tell me why, if I'm wrong. Like, why does it matter to have the carbonated stuff with foam floating on top of it if it's the same thing as just like knocking some out and having it look really cool? I mean, the soap pours look cool. They look cool, and they're like
the
slat
American
across
model
the
is
top. Yeah,
Make it
they look good.
majestic on that. The third step is the majestic part of it. You create
Right.
that whip on the third step. The
Right.
first two are just normal pours, mechanical, knocking stuff out of carbonation.
Right.
The third one is that spectacle.
Sure. And, you know, I think that if you did kind of saber the beer, that you would get, and you had that the dimpled glass and stuff like that, I think you'd get as many oohs and ahs from it.
I think this argument's a little, I don't know what the right word is, but misrepresented.
Okay.
Because like you do drink with your eyes and with the experience of it. Like these are very experiential things too. To watch someone pull a beer in a different way and that you're at the tap room, like all of that adds to your perception of what that beer is.
Well,
so it could be that you're right that like the physical molecules or the alignment of the bubbles and the foam might end up being the same thing. Mm-hmm. But if you watch someone do something they care about, and then you care about it too, you will think about that beer differently, and that will change your perception of it. And what flavor is your perception of aromas and experiences of things going on in your mouth.
So then
it will by definition change the flavor if you're paying more attention to it and thinking more about it.
So by that stroke, a Japanese sharp pour, for example, if you are in a restaurant that has table service and it's served in the other room and brought to you, doesn't mean jack shit.
No, well, it's part of like, you know, if you know that they're pouring it in a sharp way and you think that matters to you, then yes, that will change the way the beer tastes to you.
Okay.
Because taste is your perception of things.
Right.
And so if you think someone's taking more care in the dispensing method,
Sure.
whether or not that like changes the way that the bubbles are aligned physically or not, doesn't have as much to do with the way you perceive it.
But if we're going there,
it might be.
if we're going there,
Yeah.
then it means as much. Literally, I mean this literally. It means as much potentially as the Rocky Mountains turning blue.
No.
Because to
No.
you,
No.
I'm told that beer is at its best and designed to be drank at the temperature when those mountains turn blue.
That's a disingenuous argument, I think, though.
It's totally not.
Yeah, it totally is.
Okay.
You think that like the fact that because this beer is colder, it's going to taste better to you, and for some people, maybe that's true.
That's what I'm saying.
And we are the people
It's the
that care about the
perception.
dispensing method.
But
Right.
what
But
you're
that
saying is
does
it's all
change your perception.
perception.
I didn't say it was all perception. I said if that perception is there, then it does
change,
it
yes.
does actually change the way that you appreciate the beer.
And you know that you and I both agree on that. But what I'm saying is, to what end? Like, you can say that about like if it's drank from a twisty straw.
Sure, but
You can say it
yeah,
to
but
anything.
there are things where like there are beliefs about improving the quality of your beer, and there are things where like it's colder or it's twisting around in a tube that are fundamentally different than people who are dedicating a lot of time and thought into dispensing beer in a way that is probably has some physical differences to it, but also is about presenting something that we care and think about what we're giving to you and want to present things and think about things in a way that's a little bit more deep and complex than just like open it and close it.
Okay. So then it's a spectrum. And like where then?
That's a matter of taste.
Exactly. I mean,
matter
everything impacts the flavor of the beer on some level. The temperature at which it's poured. Is it on cask? Right? We all agree with that, and we're just making value judgment calls on what actually improves the flavor of the beer, and people come to us trusting us to make that call for them. in general, not saying us Hopewell, I'm saying in general for craft beer, that's what they want from stewards of it. And some people can co-opt that and do it in disingenuous ways, like, hey, the beer is cold, it's good to drink now, as if your own senses holding the thing couldn't tell you that. I'm losing my train of thought, but I think, of course, like it's not just about the visual aspect of it, which is a huge part, and it's like kind of indisputable to the point that like you drink with your eyes, and that will impact the way you perceive something. So why not do that? Why not have people have a better experience instead of being like, well, actually, we can just pour this like shit, and you're just gonna like
Absolutely.
it. You know what I mean? I think.
Well, like then let's say with like the cocktail, watching somebody carve a perfect sphere of ice,
yeah, that's great,
in their hand, and
enjoy
then
it more,
drop
yeah.
it in there, right?
Right.
So
what? So I don't. I guess I'm. My question
Does
to
it-
you would be like, why is that bad?
I don't think it's necessarily bad. No, I don't
I
think
think it's
necessarily
cool.
bad.
I think it's like part of the fun and like the wonder of this stuff is presentation. That's a huge aspect of it. And going back a little bit, I don't think it's all presentation necessarily. While I do think it's a huge part of it. Again, we had Zigmas come into Hopewell, bring his faucet over, and we tested the beers to say, is this actually making a difference? And if it is it for the better? We decided it was.
Sure.
That's on our own palate, though. I mean, not everyone's going to believe that. So I'm not going to go ahead and say, yeah, Luger's going to make every beer better, or even to you that a beer dispensed,
Sure.
our beer dispensed off a Luger is going to be better than one dispensed off a Perlick. We make that call, and that's all we can do at the end of the day is make the calls that we best know how to make with regards to recipe development, what processes we employ. At the end of the day, it's like we have to make those calls, and that's the call we've made.
And you have every right to and should do what you think is going to make it taste better. You also said that the big frontier was dispense and stuff like that. So it's like, is that the same as saying like the next big step in cocktail? Remember, I'm intentionally being a little bit dickish, but like the next big step in cocktail making is the size and shape of the ice we use.
I mean, that is a thing in cocktail making. That's like the aviary has a literal ice program.
Sure.
Where they make different types of ice for different drinks. And there are...
So that is that is the next big thing in cocktail making, is to say like...
Well, it already is a big thing for them.
Well, I think what's
The
different
ice.
about the little difference here is that craft beer, for the most part, American craft beer has not been necessarily that concerned with dispense as an industry. It's been all the front end. It's been all what's happening on the production side. I think generally speaking, there is somewhat of a disconnect of what's happening on the production side, the brewers and all the work that they're putting in, and then what happens on the front of house side or the taproom side.
Yeah.
Not necessarily giving the same amount of care or intention behind it. I'm not sure what the reason for that is. I think it's really important to see it through to the very end, and I think a lot of breweries are just missing that element that would make you enjoy a spot more, even if side by side blind you didn't taste the difference. I think that's sort of beside the point on some level. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then it's about how it looks, how that look makes you feel, and like how watching somebody take care in making it look that way.
That's a part of it. We don't make a call to pour it a certain way if we don't think it actually improves it or presents it in a way that is like really enjoyable. We're not just gonna throw something on for the sake of it and say, "Oh, cool, right?"
You don't want to dump it into a glass and then have this is what it is, and you go to every other bar and they serve it the same way. You want to have a little bit of that connection with the bartender or the tapster or the brewer through that service method at the end. Like they're the last person you see pour their beer and hand it to you in a glass. If it's a service model when you're in a table service, that's the waiter or waitress, so that's going to be part of it too. But yeah, it's a little bit that's the last step, so you want to make sure that's the best one you can. If it's a clean glass, An
The
attractive
type of
looking-
glass,
yeah.
the type of glass, the type of what the beer looks like in the glass. I mean, those are all important things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Intentional things too for
Right.
even their place that's serving it, or when you're a bar, you are serving other people's stuff. But when you're a brewery, you're serving your own things. So you have your own labeling, you have your own last step. That's the taproom model.
Sure. But then it could be, I mean, as long as it's intentional and meant to be, additive to the experience. I mean, is a frosted glass the same thing? Does that achieve potentially the same thing?
I'm not opposed to a frosted glass at Hopewell.
Yeah.
Frosted glass
Right.
is pretty cool.
Like,
that was one of my predictions.
Yeah, I could see a world where we're like, we're gonna.
You didn't say that if that was good or bad, Mike, but yeah.
I could see
prediction
a
was
world.
typically bad. Yeah.
I could see a world where we're like, let's do our American adjunct lager and serve it kind of like in the sports bar method.
Yeah,
Like I
sure.
think, and
Shaker
that
pint.
Yeah, and like
or frosted mug.
yeah, like super cold beers,
Oh, I
like
see.
certain contexts. Like I think that could be fun. That sounds cool to me.
I think
I'd be
people
into
would
it.
definitely enjoy that. They would.
Yeah.
They're
All right,
recalling
thanks, Chris.
their own
Appreciate
method,
it.
but they're supporting a local person. So.
Yeah. It's like obviously there's some like element of having fun on that level. It's like
It's nostalgia there.
yeah. I think
Right.
Where tap or I mean like I don't know at Hopewell we have to think really hard about what gets people into our spot. We don't have food. We don't allow dogs. There's all the stuff that we don't have a huge outdoor beer garden that attracts people. So we have to do a lot of things on the details and the margins that might not attract people like on the surface, but people come to our spot and they get to know us for being good at presentation. And it's things like that we think about pretty hard. And like that's part of why I think it's the next frontier, because I think that's what's going to set you apart is as breweries continue to get better about consistency. And in Chicago there's a ton of great breweries, so how do you set yourself apart? I think that I think this is kind of the next frontier.
They
for
pour
like us.
good beers at your place. So
Sure.
people
Right.
are like, yeah, I want a good pour.
Yeah,
Right.
Right.
No, it's good. And I also think I'm not against someone intentionally doing a frosted mug to whatever, for any reason, nostalgia, or because it's, we're doing, our adjunct lager and watching on Sundays when the Bears games are on, and we're going to have, peanuts and stuff like that. Like,
How do you feel
evocative
about-
and kind of like silly in a way, a little bit. I think that's fun, and that's good, and that's totally cool. I mean, I had a
about Lucre
friggin'
pours
like
in there?
punch card for a mild. I mean, like, you don't think I'm into like gimmicks and stuff like that are fun to partake in?
You've
Like,
never had a hazy IPA on draft here. You stick
that's
to your
true.
guns.
That's true. Right. And I love Boss pours.
That's right.
every pour is bossed up.
Yeah, every pour.
Boss Town.
And I think in that light, I'm fine with it. And I think that when you say that, the carbonation on the bottom of this is going to be fully carbonated, and then we're going to float the foam on top, versus knocking it all out and doing a slow pour, is also, true.
The wet foam melts into the beer, though. Makes it easier to drink over time.
Sure. So, like, okay.
I honestly,
So-
I don't know what that means. Can
Right,
you
and I
explain
don't
that
know,
a
like,
little bit more?
quantify that.
Like, I'm
Like,
trying. Well, I
mean-
don't need to quantify it, but like, what is that? I don't know. I don't understand that.
So
And I
when you
do- I
pour
like these things.
when you pour like a regular smooth pour, a chladnika, so you have the regular foam on top. You spill a little bit of beer out of the lucre, and then you pour it into the glass, form that foam cap first, then pour the beer underneath that foam cap. Mm-hmm. The liquid coming out is fully carbonated beer. The foam is the densest possible you can get out of the lucre because you spilled a little bit off the front. Okay. And lucre always wants it to spill off the back too, but you don't have to do that all the time. But you want to have a nice full liquid thing. But as that foam, which is 50% beer, like the most the most liquid form of that wet foam, it forms into beer itself. It's flat beer. So the flat beer mixes with the regular carbonated beer underneath and makes it easier to drink over that time. Because you're drinking through the foam. You might have a full first sip, but that foam is melting into that beer and mixing the flat foam, the flat beer, with the regular carbonated beer underneath.
So it changes over time as you drink it. It gets less carbonated.
Yeah, and
Not
because
that
it's less
going
carbonated,
flat,
less
but
filling,
because-
you make it easier to drink it over that time.
Cool.
Color me skeptical. Okay, so
You don't
letter
say.
letter one. I mean, I don't know.
You need a
Like,
good tapster to do that. You need a good quality foam it's trainable.
so we have a letter that is related to this
From a real jerk.
from a real jerk. I can already tell. If you want to leave a letter, or if you want to send a letter, I should say, you can send it to us. The address is in the show notes. It's 3173 North Elston Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. Send it to the Beer Temple. 60618 is the zip. You probably want that. Or you can email it, electronically mail it to insiders@craftbeertemple.com. So we got this one electronically mailed to us. And it says, Dear Beer Temple Podcast, for the last several months, I have been enjoying unprecedented sleep. It wasn't until I experienced the restless repercussions of having heard Chris's lucre libel from episode number 325 that I realized the source of my restful streak was purely based on the false notion that Chris had accepted the efficacy of the lucre side pull faucet. Much like a parent consoles his or her child after they've been bullied in school, I reassured my lucre faucet that we lent the Beer Temple that Chris's hateful words just meant he is struggling with unrelated issues, and that he likely has love for lucres and just hasn't accepted it yet. I will say, I do like lucres.
The mask comes off.
I don't think that's the first time I've said that. Heinous and outrageous claims such as there's no such thing as wet foam and equating this concept to the excrement of male cows were tossed around with no regard for the effects that would have on my ability to sleep at night. Upon hearing the details of Chris's highly scientific process of debunking this so-called wet foam myth, determined that no attempt at explaining the flaws in his experiment would yield my desired results. Therefore, I have come to the realization that the only way to truly get Chris on board the lucre train is to conduct a Mythbuster-style episode featuring myself, Chris, Mike, the Fade Master. Fades are critical for dramatic effect. Lots of alcohol and an amateur camera person. With 3-tier be open to the role of producer and sponsor in exchange for donning all their merch.
How
for
many
the
ends
episode.
are in that, Don?
The correct amount. Looks like you fell asleep on the end. Flights to Czechia are cheap right now. Your friend, Tom, chairman of the Lucre Defense Task Force. So that's Tom from Goldfinger sending that to us. And you know what? I did a little bit of experimenting today.
Uh-oh.
With the help of my friend Jake. I actually weighed a glass filled with wet foam.
Who poured the wet foam?
Jake did.
Uh-huh.
And I weighed it on a scale, and I paired it out so it was just the weight of the actual liquid in there. I have a picture. We're talking about visual media here, so you can see. Here's the picture. Okay, wet foam poured from a lucre on a scale. Now I did make one mistake, as I left that scale in my car, but I have another scale, and I would hope that they are both pretty accurate, and we can rectify that.
All right.
Please,
How much science?
how much are they going to be off by? I mean, these are like
A lot.
accurate. These are supposed to be accurate to like hundredths of a gram. These ones.
No, they're not. Get out of here, dude.
Hundredths of an ounce. Hundredths of an ounce.
Hundredths of a
Hundredths
gram
of an
is like
ounce.
$100,000 scale.
No. Hundredths of an ounce. Hundredths of an ounce. Sorry. No. Hundredths of an ounce. And single grams. and the this small what do you got? That's like a 200.
That's a 0.2L. Yeah.
A 0.2L.
230 mil to the brim.
Yeah. So you got
that's
it.
good to know. 230 mils to the brim. All right.
There you go. So
That's a boss
Cole's
pour.
that's a boss pour. You can see there's a
Chris's
tiny,
favorite.
tiny little bit of foam in there.
So all right,
Tiny
already,
little
already
bit of-
threw off the experiment. There's
Well,
beer
tiny-
at the bottom
tiny-
of that one.
But he also brought it to me when he handed it to me. Jake and I will test. It was foam top to bottom, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did not pour anything into that glass besides that dense, wet foam.
Yeah, I mean,
So part of it is started to
Yeah.
sell.
What by the time he handed it to me, I set it down, pulled up my camera, took a picture.
Foam is beer.
Okay. Exactly. So it was 3.55 ounces. I then, just today, he brought me the same glass, and I poured this beer of bone dry. I'm talking, this is Death
Yeah, and
Valley
that says
foam.
3.2.
Yeah, hold on. Hold on, dude. Death Valley foam here. The driest, bone driest I possibly could. And you're right. It was 3.2, right? So it was lighter than the wet foam. Now, there's a lot of bullshit out there saying that dry foam is 25% beer and wet foam is 50% beer. That's what I said to Tom was bullshit. I was like, it ain't different, man. Like, I think they're both about 50%, I think. And I was wrong. This one there's a 10% difference between the two. And that's significant.
significant.
It is significant.
Yeah.
It ain't double.
Shit.
It ain't like one is like, oh my God, this foam is so dry. Does anyone have any water?
It's a different scale, so maybe it could be
Yeah,
okay.
right. Right. They could be closer together. They could be closer
Could be
together.
farther, but more
Right.
likely
Could be.
farther.
Yeah, exactly.
It's two different scales.
Right.
It's more likely that they're off in bad directions. No, I'm just kidding.
exactly.
But there is like
so there is a difference.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, and I think I've been saying through the snarkiness that there isn't a difference. All I'm saying is it's exaggerated. I think it's an exaggerated difference, and I think it's okay to exaggerate these things, but at the same time, I think we have to be like, I know. It looks
Well-
cool. It's fun. There's some romance to it. I like all those things. I think all those things are important, but it's also like,
I think there's also something to be said that just because it's not 50% more beer doesn't mean it's not perceptibly very, very different
Agreed.
in quality. Right? There's
Perhaps.
there's
I
certain
don't know.
flavor compounds that are perceptible in parts per billion. There's certain they're perceptible in parts per million. There's certain they're perceptible in parts per trillion, right? So like to say that like, oh, this isn't 50% more beer or 100% more beer in this foam isn't to say that you perceive it as texturally very different.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I
And
agree.
so like your experience with that could be, oh, this is silky and this is like twice as silky as when you pour it at the top. And
I'm not
and
trying
that's
to
what we're
like.
talking about.
I'm not trying to be a no. That's not what I'm talking about. Maybe that's what.
What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is I didn't make up the 50 and 25% numbers.
Oh, sure. Well, whatever.
25% is very old school. Of like
Fine.
A regular American faucet would just, if it was kicking the keg at the end, and you read the glass and you maybe poured an ounce, and the other glasses full of foam, you would settle down to like 25% most times. That's a very old school number.
Maybe.
though. And
Maybe.
who knows what the
I don't
normal
know.
faucets
But
are.
what really matters in this is people's perception of it. So if there is a like qualitative perception of difference, that is meaningful and that is enough for me to be a worthwhile method of dispense. Unlike you've
Fine.
been saying this whole
I agree.
time, where no one should ever use a lucre.
Right.
No one
Exactly.
no one should ever.
I think they're good.
use it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm seriously, I mean, there's a very decent chance that I will have one. I think they're cool. I think they're fun. I think people enjoy looking at them and stuff like that. But I do think it's a bit of like at the point of sale marketing. I don't think that
That's service, though, baby.
Yeah.
That's how you get your third Michelin star. That's things that makes a difference.
So what about
People feel different when they feel like they're getting good service or something special, and that truly affects the way you perceive and the way you feel about the thing you're drinking. And honestly, all that matters is the way you feel about the thing you're drinking. The IBUs don't matter. The ABV doesn't
All
matter.
that matters is what's in the glass. You were always a big person for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
Yeah.
Since day one, baby.
Yeah. I'm going to go back and confirm that you've always felt that way. So then in that way, the hazies, it would be right, it'd be funny in a way, right? Boss pour those.
I think wet foam those
MFers
babies.
out. But think about it. That's not the traditional dispense method, dude.
good
You
point.
gotta meniscus them, And then, for an adjunct lager, you gotta do the American dispense.
Which is just down the side.
You have
Don't
to
let
buy.
any of the- any
You
of the
have to
foam
buy
break out.
the
14-ounce
the
cheater
basic
pints.
micromatic. The 51, 22.
It's definitely an
stainless steel.
off-brand chrome faucet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But right. Exactly. You gotta
From
do
a,
that.
from a line that hasn't been changed out in 30
Yeah,
years.
we
Right.
intentionally don't clean this line for our American adjunct lager.
There you go,
Right.
dude. Now you're thinking like Grand Atkins.
Right. No,
You're the Grand
that's what you
Atkins
have to
of
do.
beer dispensing
Part of the
methods.
dispense. Think about it though.
It's nostalgic.
Part of it is you have to pull one entire pint, dump it, pour another one to get all that diacetyl out of the line. That's part of it. And maybe there's a hint left in there.
You think they're dumping that pint if you're at the bowling alley? No, dude.
if you ask
they're
them
giving
to,
you
they
that
may.
pint.
Yeah.
No way.
That's the
dude.
bowler's share, they call
They're-
it.
Right?
They're making you pay for that thing.
You want the first pour or the second?
Yeah, sure.
know,
They
you want
make-
this-
It's like making pancakes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Season the pan.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're all authentic and legitimately have a difference on the end result of the experience, right?
Yeah.
All of them.
Can I talk you into doing shaker pint night here, where it's just all of craft beers, American macro lagers, and put them all on next to each other and have all shaker?
We were joking
frozen
about
shaker
doing
pints.
an amber ale event at a Shaker Pints.
Yeah.
I mean,
14-ounce cheater shaker pints.
I prefer, shaker pint, say what you will. I will take that over a decent amount of craft glasses that get shoved in front of me.
It's a wild take.
It is that's my hot take. I actually
What
take
is
a shaker pint is better. I prefer certain beers out of a shaker pint that I like. Okay, here's an instance. There are some spots, craft beer spots, that will insist on serving I don't know, call it it's like a Pilsner or something in a Belgian tulip.
right.
I would 100% prefer
I
that
agree.
in a shaker pint.
I agree.
100%.
Yeah, but wouldn't you prefer that in some sort of better shaped pint glass?
Well, I guess, of course, but my point being is
Given those two.
in an effort to be elevated, you actually made my experience worse.
Right, sure. I understand what you're saying. Where you mismatch, you're like, well, we have fancy glassware,
Right.
and this needs to be served in 12 ounces, so I guess it goes
Exactly.
In the
That's the
Mooney
thing with
glass.
the tulips too. Is it's a way to downsize your pour.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Just get
100%.
sure.
And there's
I take
there's
back
also
that.
like
Saying
the
that
shaker
about-
glass of tulips too. We all know them. Like they've come around now
Yeah.
where they're just they're not the nicest, and you've seen them, and it's fine.
Yeah, can we go to a dive bar?
Yeah, right.
It's sick.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Delilah's baby, shaker pints.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's native for the space, it's
I'm with you. I'm not hating on them.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to hate on Lucre. I don't want to hate on the Japanese sharp pour. I don't want to hate on shaker pints. But when someone tells me that a frosted shaker pint really brings this stuff out, I'm going to say, how much? How much does it matter? That's kind of where
I get it.
I'm at.
Yeah.
You know,
You want to quantify this.
well, it's and if you're I don't know, but that's just cool to say it does. I'm yeah, you're right, it does. It is cool just to say it. You know?
There you go, people. Just don't tell Chris it's going to be 25% more beer in the foam. Just say, doesn't it taste better? And he'll be like, yeah, it probably tastes better.
Or just or even be I don't know, we just say it because it's cool, and I think it does taste different, and this and that. I can get behind that. But when you start saying it's it's objectively additive. How about that? Objectively additive. Then, okay, tell me how.
Who's doing that? Who's saying it's objectively additive?
Nobody says objectively additive, except asshole like me. But and we have to go pretty soon because Mike.
No,
wants
we're
us
starting round 2
Mike,
here.
Mike,
All right, another 2 hours.
Mike wants us to keep these high and tight. These shows.
3 hours or less.
No, I mean just when like definitive statements are made about whatever it is. I think then that's when I'm like,
Yeah, when people say things that should be quantifiable, then they need to be quantified, right? Where you're like, this is 50% more beer.
like the Lucre has. I've seen some places that have like how many different pours of a pint can you do? I mean, there's like 5 of them, right? Or more, right?
We have a little chart that has 6 options.
6 options, right?
But they're all like kind of recreating different styles. So I wouldn't recommend any brewery do that. Like I think Hopewell does 1 or 2. They do smooth.
We can do the other ones off menu, but we present beers in one.
Yeah, you need
every time.
You need a program.
Yeah,
You
if
can't
someone's
just
coming to us like, hey, I want a Viennese slow pour, we can do that.
Yeah, you can't do
like,
that.
No
but
one's ever done that.
You have to have the bartender that likes doing that. So that's
Right. Right.
we're only 3 people in our shop. I could do any of the other ones if you want to call anything else. Otherwise, if you don't call anything, which almost nobody calls anything else, they get the smooth pour. That's the default. That's the 3-finger check.
Sure.
Ladinka. So that's it.
Sure.
You heard it here first. If you are listening to this deep in this episode and you go to Hopewell or Beermiscuous, please call your pour.
Off menu.
Google what the
Please.
pours are and then mispronounce them to the point where no one can understand what you're saying. Yeah.
No, the place in Vienna, the Budvar bar, that's what you got to say you want, and you
Yeah.
demand it because you can tell the
A
difference.
splash pour.
Right.
Yeah,
Which
splash.
is also, I would say, if you're talking about cool methods of dispense, high in the running for coolest.
Yeah.
High in the running.
I've never seen this. I gotta find.
Oh,
it.
yeah,
Here,
yeah. I'll show you in a
Send
moment.
me a video of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is for off air. We're not going to
Patreon
talk
episode.
about a video.
Again.
We're not gonna. Yeah, we're not gonna do that. But I want to thank our guests. Right, Mike,
Thank you so much.
Jake, and Zigmas. Thank you for being up for the debate and the hot takery. I know at least one of us is always up for some hot takery. Probably
every
more.
day.
I feel
probably
like it's
more.
over 200 degrees in here now.
Kelvin.
And steadily
Yeah,
rising.
Kelvin.
Kelvin.
It's probably 200 degrees Kelvin
Yeah.
if I know my different
Fahrenheit
methods of-
451 up in here.
Papers are lighting on
Right.
fire.
Exactly.
Not a single book is
Yeah,
left.
you're burning books back here.
Yeah.
What is this? How to dispense? Burn it.
Exactly. Micromatics guide.
Flame on.
Before we get out of here, let's around the horn. Would anyone like to say anything before we leave?
We didn't do any sharp pour stuff. We just mentioned what the sharp pour was.
It's true. Why don't you give a quick?
Okay, quick. It's just a pour gently down the side of the glass like you would on a traditional American pour, and then you top off with that good quality foam. So in Lucre terms, it'd be like a crisp pour. But this is all like nature.
And then you
to-
saber it, right? That's
Yeah,
a big
you-
important
you
part.
can if you don't do it right, and you want to clean up the bubbles on top because you want to have a nice tight bubble.
Right.
But that's a pretty traditional service across anywhere. So even if you're in a beer hall, you're going to get the sharp pour with that quality foam on top. If you're going to go to a pour shop where they're doing their fancy menu, that's the regular sharp pour. It could be different names. It could be the Awa pour if you're Suntory. I think that's right. But yeah, that's pretty standard, like nice foam cap. That's what you need.
And you're pouring like that. Do you have a pour like that in general on the menu at all times, or?
No, we just established like a Japanese pour program.
Cool.
Which I got to design a menu for. But
I mean, right now you have one of our beers on the
I
Japanese.
do. I have was Akahoshi Baru. I don't know if you had like 2 I's in there. I think it's actually 2 R's.
Well,
We'll talk about that afterwards.
And also
My-
Hopewell Sharp pour. So the Hopewell Sharp that they.
Yeah, we
named
did
it
a Japanese lager called Sharp. Really awesome off the sharp pour. We blew through it at the tap room really quickly. So if you want,
Excellent beer.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. It was a fun beer to do, and so it sounds like if you guys want to make the trek out to Beermiscuous Highwood, they'll be pouring it in the traditional Japanese.
Yeah,
method.
we're only like
Ask
30%
for the
through.
off-menu Japanese type pours.
Yeah,
though.
actually, you know what? If you come to Hopewell, we will pour you sharp pours of anything. I do only recommend it with, well, we'll let the staff guide you on that front.
Irish Stout, sharp pour, baby. Mike, anything for you?
No.
All right, then we'll see you next week. So long.
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again, 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 again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again, 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 again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again, 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 again.